I welcome you all to yet another session on MANATV. This is facilitated by AP State Skill Development Corporation, and this session will be about Cognizant placement drive that's going to happen in two different locations by end of December. We will let you know the location details as well as the dates very soon, but let's now make use of this session. So what I'm going to take care of is the verbal ability. In verbal ability, you will have questions on passage comprehension, you will have questions on sentence correction, you may have questions on jumbled sentence and you need to put that in right order, plus also sentence improvement. So there's a difference between a sentence correction and sentence improvement. In sentence correction, you need to identify a question stem which may be grammatically incorrect, and in terms of sentence improvement, you need to identify where a option will be given which can be replaced with a question stem to further improve the grammatical construction of the sentence. The idea of this program is to reach each and every person no matter where you are across the state of Andhra Pradesh. You can watch this program at home. If you have YouTube on your phone, you can do that. You can watch YouTube in your desktop or laptop as well. If you're in the college atmosphere, and this will be beamed live even on YouTube as well as the MANATV channel. So even if you miss this program, you can watch it later on internet. So please make the best use of it. The only challenge that we have on hand is this particular session cannot be interactive, so you cannot ask me questions, but the good news is you can still post the questions. I can take a look at the questions and provide you with the answer the next day. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please post your questions. On the right side, you will have the comment section, the comment box. Post your questions, whatever you have. I'll take a look and I'll provide you with the answer. So in today's session, we will learn the nitty-gritties of passage comprehension. Why is it necessary? The do's and don'ts, how to identify the correct answer, and what is the approach that you should have in terms of passage comprehension. We will also have a little bit of practice, at least 4 to 5 passages. I will read out the passage, I will explain what the passage means, then I will explain what the question means so that we can as a team identify the correct answer. Now having said that, you also need to practice on your own, because if you do not practice, you will not be able to master on this segment. And when we meet again, either Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever the next session is scheduled, I will also facilitate program on verbal ability, of course, but that will be on sentence correction and sentence improvement. All right. So today let's begin with passage comprehension. So before we start, we need to understand what exactly passage is. So you will have a paragraph based on which you will have certain questions. Now these questions will have answers in terms of options, and you need to pick the right option. Now the answer will lie within the passage itself. Passage means a short paragraph, could be more than one paragraph. Comprehension means understanding. So there could be a line which is mentioned, but exactly the information will not be mentioned. Say for example, it's talking about a personality, and let's give the personality a name. Say for example, his name is John. So it says John was born in the year of 1990, and at the age of 18 he graduated as a doctor. Because he was very intelligent, he graduated as a doctor at the age of 18. Now one of the question in the passage could be, in which year John got his graduation in MBBS. So the passage says he was born in 90, and say for example 80 or 90, doesn't really matter. So he was born in the year 1990, and at the age of 18 he graduated as an MBBS. So 18, if you add that to 90, so of course you know the year is 2008. But explicitly, clearly, the number 2008 will not be mentioned. So you will have the question, in which year did he get his degree in MBBS? So you would read and you will understand, okay, 1990 born, at the age of 18 he graduated, that means it's 2008 or whatever the year is. So that is how the questions will be. You need to read, understand, analyze and come up with the answer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the passage comprehension tips, easy way to understand how to approach the passage when you have these questions coming up to you. Okay, so here is a reading passage comprehension tips for you. Number one, please read the passage. Do not take too much time to read, but read it carefully. Underline the key information. Now, in case if you have a paper examination or paper assessment, you can certainly underline, but since most of it or pretty much all the assessment is going to be online, of course, obviously you cannot take a pen and write on the screen, can you? So you need to make a note of these key information like dates, years, numbers, persons, incidents or events. Anything that you feel is important in the passage, please make a note of it. Then it says subject of the passage. The subject of the passage will not be mentioned, but you need to identify what is the precise thing the author is talking about. So that's exactly what the subject is. Now that you have the subject, you need to identify the main idea of the passage. What the author is saying about the subject is what you need to identify. And the tone of the author of the passage, which is the manner the author has adopted the passage. For example, I have a subject and the subject is, say, demonetization. Okay, so the subject is demonetization, but the main theme of the subject the passage is electronic payments. And the tone that the author is taking is, the author is saying this is not effective in rural India, but it's effective in urban India. So you need to identify three different aspects. Number one, the subject. Number two, the main idea, the central theme of the passage. And number three, you need to identify what tone the author is picking. So is he speaking for, is he speaking against, or is he taking a very neutral perspective of what the subject is. Now to identify or to understand what is the structure, what is the tone, I'm going to help you. So do not get confused. Just pay attention to this particular segment, because this particular segment will focus on helping you understanding how to approach a passage comprehension. All right. So here we go, understanding the structure. So what do we mean by the structure? The structure means gist, and the gist basically means general idea plus structure plus tone. So if we have a general idea and we have a structure, and when we add the tone to it, that is what the gist is all about. This will also help to build thematic composition and logical sequence of the passage. Thematic composition means the chronological order of the information and the logical sequence. To make it easier for you, I am going to go back to my previous slide so that you can make a quick note of this information. So I am going to pause here so that you can make a note of this information. Okay, so make a note of this key information that you need to know. I am moving on to the next one, so please make a note of the subject, main idea, the tone. And here is the next one, please make a note of this as well. All right, let's move on. Now, what is the approach that you need to adopt? Approach basically means how you should go ahead once you read a passage. So you will have the passage, underneath you will have 5 to 6 questions. So how do we go about it to ensure that you understand and you answer accurately. All right, so here is approach number 1. So instead of reading the entire passage, read critically the first and the last paragraphs, because first paragraph will have the introduction, the last paragraph will have the summary. Generally, what the author is saying can be identified in the first few lines of the passage. For the rest passage, examine quickly what the author has said about the subject. For longer passages, try to put down in 10 to 15 words for each paragraph what you feel are the central points of the passage. I'm going to pause so that you can make a note of it. So let me repeat, instead of reading the entire passage, read critically the first and the last paragraph. That is because the first paragraph will talk about introduction, the last paragraph will talk about the summary. Then generally what the author is saying can be identified in first few lines of passage. For the rest passage, examine quickly what the author has said about the subject. So when you see it, when you read it, you will understand what the author is trying to say or what the tone is. For longer passages, try to put down 10 to 15 words for each paragraph, what you feel are the central points of the passage. All right, let's move forward. So that is approach number 1. Second point in terms of approach, identify the structural words that tell you the important ideas or transitions in a passage. The most common structural words are given below. So these are the words that you need to pay attention to. If you see these kind of words in the passage, you will understand that, okay, what these words exactly mean and what the author is trying to say. All right. So we have 3 different kind of words. The first one is the continuity word, the second one is contrast words, and the third one is a conclusion word. I will quickly explain what these mean. Meanwhile, please make a note of the list of continuity words. Continuity words, for example, similarly, moreover, additionally, in the same way, and likewise. Now let's understand what do we mean by continuity words. Continuity words basically mean the author would support his point of view further. Here the key point is further. So he has stated a point and he is going to support it further. So let's take a look of these words, and I also going to show you some examples. So the first one is similarly. All right. So let me take the same example of demonetization, so that will be easy for us to stay abreast with inconsistency of the examples that I am going to give you today. So if you have this word similarly in the passage, let me expand this or zoom this a little more so that you can see it clearly. I hope this is clear. All right, let me begin. Okay, it says the economic policy of demonetization was implemented with a wider intent of growth. Similarly, the government decided to implement more reforms, which means he is supporting this particular sentence and he is adding further. So, similarly means you are supporting and you are going further, like you read here, the author would support his point of view further. All right. Let us look at the next word, which is moreover. The decision was welcomed by many people in the urban areas. Moreover, the people acted as a catalyst to spread more awareness. Again, I am supporting this further in the sentence. Third one is additionally, then in the same way, likewise. So, all these words that you see, these are supportive and in terms of agreement or a very supportive point of view. Now, if you look at the next set of words, contrast words. Contrast words, what do we mean? Contrast words means the author would introduce a contrarian point of view. Contrarian means opposite. Here he is disagreeing with the previous sentence. For example, nonetheless, however, but, although, despite. So, however is a common word, so let me take that. So, same sentence I am making a change. Okay. The decision was welcomed by many people in the urban areas. However, people in the rural areas were very apprehensive. So, this is for and this is against. So, here is my negative and opposite reaction to the first sentence, because I am using this particular word however. If I use nonetheless, now I'm trying to bring in some more examples. Say for example, it's about a candidate selection. Okay. The candidate came late for the interview. He was allotted a new slot after 10 days nonetheless, which means if you read this, it means he will not be allowed, however, he was allowed. But and however are same. However is more positive tone, but is a negative tone. Likewise, although, despite, for example, the same sentence I can write it differently. Despite being late for the interview, the candidate was given a slot after 10 days. Okay. So, I am using different words, but I am trying to convey the same meaning. Let us look at the next one, conclusion words. What do we mean by conclusion words? These are the words where the author would sum up his argument so far. That means he is concluding, he is summarizing. For example, thus, therefore, hence, in summary, in conclusion. So, I am continuing with this particular sentence. Despite being late for the interview, the candidate was given a slot after 10 days. Hence, it was a second opportunity for the candidate to prove his competency, which means I'm going to end, I'm concluding, and I'm summarizing. All right. So, when you see these kind of words, continuity words or contrast words or conclusion words, when you read these kind of words, that will help you identify what is the tone of the author in the passage. All right. So, please make a note of this description of these three kind of words: continuity, contrast, conclusion. All right, moving on. Here it says, try to recognize the words that represent positive and negative role in the passage. These words will let you decide whether the author is for or against the subject. A few examples of such words are given below: positive, efficient, enthusiastic, bright, fortunate, passionate. Negative, for example, foul, alarming, detrimental, pessimistic, stressful. So, these kind of words you should be able to identify which direction the author is taking. Is he speaking for or is he speaking against? Please make a note of this. You need to be fairly good in terms of vocabulary to understand these words and also to identify the tone. So, please do practice a lot. The more you practice, the better you get. Okay? So, when you look at certain words which looks positive, that means the author is trying to give a very positive point of view, and if you see negative words, of course, the author is showing a negative perspective. Okay? Fourth point in terms of the approach. Now, what should you do? You understood, you listed down all the words, but now what you got to do? It says PQ approach. PQ approach basically means passage first, then the questions. Here, read the passage thoroughly first and then read the questions. Scan through the passage and keep going back and forth with the questions and passage. Read the second paragraph, scan all the questions and see what you can answer, then read paragraph 3 and 4. So, usually you will have not more than 2 paragraphs, so do not worry about it. PQ basically means read the passage first, then look at the questions. Read the entire passage at least twice and then see the questions. So, you will have a little bit of temporary memory as to what you have read, and when you read the first question, you will be able to identify where to find the answer. So, if you get a question, say out of 5 questions, if you find a question where you can quickly answer, go ahead, do that. But it is okay to go back and forth between the question and the paragraph. So, that is a PQ approach: passage first, question next. We also have a QP approach, which is first you read the questions and then you read the passage. Here it says read all the questions with their answers option first and then the passage. Read question number 1 with all the options, then go through the entire passage to answer it. Then read question 2, go through the entire passage, then question 3. Just read all the question stems without reading the answer options, then read the passage and try answering the questions by reading them with the options. I am going to make it simple for you, do not get complicated by reading this approach. Say for example, I have this particular passage. It is a very short passage. For example's sake, I have put in a very small passage. So, either you read this entire passage and then you look at the question, okay, or you read all the questions first and try to remember what the options are. You go one by one. Okay, so there are 3 questions here. You read one by one and then you go back to the passage. Okay, so what you do is, for example, let me take this example. If a piece of matter violates nature's law, it is not punished because it is not binding to obey it. There is no superior being to enforce the law of nature. It cannot be punished. It simply means that the fact have not been correctly stated by law. So now you know what the question is, you know what the options are available, then you can go back and read the passage. It's completely your choice. You want to read the passage and then look at the question, it's fine, because for some people, if you read the question first, you will get even more tensed. You don't even know where the questions are coming from. In that case, it's perfectly fine to read the passage. Like I said, the choice is yours. When you practice, the best way to do is, when you practice, have a passage, the questions, put a stop clock or a stopwatch, time yourself, do the first approach of reading the passage and then the questions, and then read the questions and then the passage, do at least twice or thrice, and then check the time, which approach is taking lesser time, which approach is making you feel more comfortable, and the most important aspect, which approach makes you more confident to approach these kind of questions like passage comprehension. Once you are able to identify your comfort zone, you need to better yourself. Say for example, if you took 3 minutes for one passage comprehension, whichever approach you have taken, passage first, question next, or question first, passage next, doesn't matter. If you took 3 minutes to solve it, the next attempt after 5 practice, the 6th one, you should take probably 2 minutes 30 seconds, which means you are saving 30 seconds. That 30 seconds can be utilized. If you have 10 such 30 seconds that you are saving, you are actually saving 3 minutes. Imagine if the overall assessment is for 30 minutes, 3 minutes is like 10 minutes you are saving, which you can use for other questions. So you need to be very calculative and you need to plan your time really well. Okay? So this is the approach for passage comprehension. In the next session, you will know how to approach it by looking at some examples. So I am going to show you certain example passages, and together we will solve these questions. And don't worry, I will explain, I will break it down and explain what the passage is all about so that you can understand clearly. So I'll see you in the next session soon. Thank you.